We're going to use Cacoo now to actually design what we have created. So open up your browser and we're going to cacoo.com, CACOO.com. And if you don't have an account, you're going to need to sign up for one. And it's a pretty simple process. If you want, you can just use Facebook login. That's how I have mine set up. Okay, so now we're on the Cacoo main page, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new diagram. Now, Cacoo can be used for a whole lot of different things. For this purpose, we're going to just draw out the site itself. But if you were to use if you needed flow charts, or you could do site maps to lay out exactly the process that your page is going to follow. You could use the wireframes that they have built in. If you actually look, they have iOS, they have iPad, they have Android. So they have a lot of very useful information. But for now, we're just going to use a blank template. And let's just select that. And if you haven't used a photo editing tool, we're just going to go through some of the basic elements of this one. The first one is the property. Just click on it, and this allows you to change the title, Web Dev Basics, and then the sheet size. So we're just going to look, and they don't really have something that we're looking for. We're going to just go ahead and create this 900 pixels wide. And this, both these elements, they're in pixels, and pixels are how your screen is laid out on a browser. Now, most monitors can usually show up to 1024 pixels. So anything that's beyond that either gets cut off, or if you're doing responsive design, which condenses the page to the screen that you're looking at it, then you're able to keep it simple. But for this purpose, we're actually not going to be doing responsive design. There's a lot more elements that go into it, and this is really just this workshop is aimed at just giving you some of the basic skills so that you can grow from there. So we're going to keep the width at 900, and the height, let's just make it 1000 for right now, and then we update the setting. So as you can see, this gray area used to be white, and now it's been shrunk in, so the canvas is now this white part right here. Now, there's a couple other tools that are going to be very useful. On the right-hand side, you have the stencils. These have the basic building blocks for the site. You can use squares, rounded squares. You can have even bigger rounded edge squares, and a whole lot of other elements. For the purposes of what we're going to build, we're really just going to stick with the square and the rounded square. And the next piece that we have is the inspector tool, and I always like keeping the inspector tool open. It's, in my opinion, is probably the most commonly used tool in this entire piece. And so here you have the text. You can just change the font, the size, all the normal elements that you can change with regards to font. And then you have the paint palette, and this allows you to fill in objects. So when we use the square, we'll use that often. The line, this is either a border that you can enable or disable, or it is just a line that you can change the thickness. This right here allows you to, one, change the positioning on the page. It allows you to more discreetly and accurately change the width and height, which is going to be important, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that in the next video. But that's very important when doing CSS. Because in CSS you end up getting very precise. And then you can add links and you can add attributes. We're really not going to use these last two tools. A couple other useful pieces are this right here, and if you just put your mouse over something, the tooltip will come up and it'll just tell you what it is. So this allows you to insert an image, and when you click on it, it just drops down and it allows you to import an image. And then the last thing that's that we're going to look at or we're going to use is export. At the end of this, we're just going to export this as a PNG file. That's an image, and it allows you to be able to share what you've created, so that you can, if you're ever working with a developer or a designer to try to get some feedback, it's useful to be able to show those elements. It's also useful if you're trying to create the wireframe so that you can pitch investors, and that way you can throw it into your PowerPoint and make it a part of your presentation. So that's the basics of Cacoo, and before we end this, we're going to create the navigation bar. So what I did here is I clicked on the square, I held down, and I dragged. If you don't hold down, then you're not going to have anything. And in that case, I just selected it and deleted. So now the nav bar, if you remember, is in the top of the page, and it's the span of the entire page. Now, what we could do is we could drag this around and try to make sure that it's in the right place. And if you put it off the page, you see a little warning right here on the left-hand side. If you actually take this and take it off of the page on the left-hand side, it's going to bring it back to the edge of the screen. But for now, we're just going to make this the width of the page, and we're going to make it the height. And you can use the navigational arrows to move this up. So I'm hitting up, 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 and now we have it where we want it. And what's interesting is if you look here, the width of this is actually 900 pixels. So this number right here is 900. And you see that the height is 50 pixels. So if we wanted to, we can make this 500. And as you see, the box, the nav bar, shrinks. So we want to make sure that it's 900, and 50 is a pretty good number. Again, you can experiment and you can play around with it, but when you are in CSS, some of these elements you are going to be specifying exact heights, exact widths, and so it's going to be important for you to keep track of this. And this is actually one of the reasons why Cacoo is going to be better to use than PowerPoint. PowerPoint isn't as precise, and the Cacoo document, it's essentially going to be your reference when you're doing the HTML and CSS. So if you're doing a lot of pages and you are designing out 5, 6, 10, 20 different pages, you're not going to be able to remember what the exact dimensions were. And Cacoo has a memory for all of that. So let's take that back to 50. Now, the X and Y axis, this is it's the same as a graph. The X-axis is the horizontal axis, and the Y-axis is the vertical. If that doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. Just come into the X-axis and type in a number and see what happens. When you type in 25, the navigational bar shifts to the right. It shifts 25. So we're going to make it 0, and as you can see, it lines up perfectly on the left-hand side. And here, again, let's also type in 25, and as you can see, it comes down, it drops down 25 pixels. But again, we want to keep this at the top, so we'll keep it at 0. And let's go to the fill for the paint, and right now the color is white, and that's boring, and it's also not what we currently have on the sample page. If you go online and take a look at it, so we're just going to make it a blue, and when you click anywhere else on the page, it will deselect what you've selected, and as you can see, we have a border. Now, it's your preference if you want a border or not, but I didn't like the border. So we come to the line tool, and right now it says that it's enabled, and it has a thickness of 1, and if you want, you can increase the thickness, and as you can see, it obviously changes the thickness of the border itself, but we're going to make it a 1, and we're going to disable it. And so now when we deselect that box, the nav bar, we see that it's clean, there's no border, and we have exactly what we want. And so now if we move the inspect element inspector tool, then we actually can see the edge of the page, and we can see that it's doing exactly what we wanted. So that's just the very basics of Cacoo. What we're going to do next is we're going to in the next video we're going to do some typing, and we're going to add the image. So stay tuned.